There are three main constants in life: death, taxes, and the fact that Ninjago will always be under attack from some dastardly villain and their mass-produced army. One week you'll be running away from evil snakes, and the next week you'll be running away from wolf cosplayers. It is just a vicious cycle that nobody can escape. In order for these many villains to attack Ninjago and be a proper threat for the ninja, they've all got to be pretty powerful, or at least they try to be. But another crucial element of being a villain capable of striking fear into the poor innocent people of Ninjago is to be actually scary. But can all Ninjago villains achieve this monumental task? And so that's what I'm here to answer today. As a person who is truly fearless and totally not scared of anything at all, except for maybe the IRS, I am the perfect judge to determine whether or not Ninjago villains would actually be scary if you encountered them in real life. As I'm only 80% of an anarchist, we'll be looking at all the major villains in the order of them appearing in the show. So of course that means the first villain's scariness to be questioned will be Samukai, who will be the first villain to be deemed scary. Just look at this guy. There's no way you would not be scared after seeing this large form skeleton coming your way. Those pure red eyes are terrifying. Using the newly invented P-meter, you can consider my pants soiled if Samukai were to become real. Next is Lord Garmadon, who is a bit of a mixed bag. If we're talking about the Season 1 and Season 2 Garmadon, then I honestly don't think I would be as scared of him. Sure, he's got the scary appearance and the 4 arms, but in Season 1 and Season 2, I feel as if Garmadon is played a lot more like a comedic villain than a true bad-to-the-bone villain. But if we're talking about resurrected Garmadon, then oh boy, clean up on all my pants, because he'd be absolutely horrifying to run into while getting the groceries. Needless to say, the P-meter is full to the brim. Instead of boring you all by going through each of the Serpentine, I'm just going to do them all under the same heading, because it doesn't matter what type of Serpentine they are, each and every one of them would be horrifying to bump into in real life. Whether that involved being hypnotized by the Hypnobrai, turned into a Serpentine by the Fangpire, made to see her greatest fears by the Venomari, suffocated by the extreme strength of a Constricti, or just straight up being eaten by Pythor. He has done it before, and I'm sure he would do it again. Taking all of this into account, the P-meter is just one more type of Serpentine away from bursting open and ruining the new carpet. Moving on to the Overlord, he's another villain that will of course be deemed terrifying. I mean, why wouldn't he be? He's the source of all darkness and evil in Ninjago. No matter what form this guy takes, he's sure to make you tremble in your boots. Well, he kinda looks a little goofy here, but he would still obliterate me with a snap of his finger, so you bet that meter's gonna be full. Entering into the 4th season, we're faced with the great threat of Master Chen, but I wouldn't be dialing any emergency services just yet. As so far, Chen is probably the least intimidating villain in this entire video. To determine if these Ninjago villains are actually scary, I'm trying to strip them down to their bare essentials, purely focusing on their powers or magical abilities, and choosing to ignore their awesome mystical weapons, which for Chen spells disaster. As without Chen's ability to steal and use elements for himself with his staff, he's literally what Cryptor called him in Days of the Departed, a skinny man in silky girl robes, which, I don't know about you, is not very scary in the slightest. So for the first time, my pants will be drier than the Sahara Desert. If anything, I'd be more scared of getting food poisoning from his noodles. But Chen's second-in-command Klaus is certainly a good bit more intimidating with his mastery of dark magic, but then again he does have a ponytail, so the P-meter can only go so far. Suddenly, it's feeling extremely windy, as the next villain to be termed scary or not is the edgy ghost himself, Moro, losing out on some vital scary points as his name does rhyme with tomorrow. At first, Moro seems like a pretty damn scary villain. Being a ghost, it makes him almost invincible to anything us mere mortals could do to him, and that elemental power of wind is sure to do more damage than just ruin your hair. Unfortunately, almost all of Moro's scariness goes down the literal drain when you remember that all ghosts in Ninjago can be easily defeated with a splash of water, which is literally 75% of our planet. Sure, I'd be petrified of a wind-controlling ghost with daddy issues at first, but once I remember I have a small bottle of water in my pocket, I'll be deemed the next ghost, but about quickly I'll get rid of this edgelord ghost. I would say the P-meter would still go up, but don't count on it reaching any world record levels, as that wouldn't be accurate and also medically concerning. If you're a person who even has just the slightest amount of taste, you will know that our next villain comes from the only noteworthy thing to ever come from 2016, and dare I say the entire human race, the Ninjago Ready Steady Stick activity book, featuring everyone's favourite character lookalike, Nauticon. Nauticon really checks all of the major boxes for being a truly scary Ninjago villain and villain in general. He's got those intimidating 4 arms that'll make him tower over you, one of his hands even being a hook which is sure to cause some damage and strike fear into your heart. He showcases his brute strength with his bare chest out, displaying all his battle scars, and that's not even mentioning the devilish facial hair. Call me crazy, but I'm starting to see what Lara saw. Ignoring the Sword of Souls, Nauticon is probably one of the strongest Ninjago villains. He has the ability to teleport pretty much anywhere, and is invulnerable to almost everything, with his only weakness being the venom of a spider that you are never going to get. And let's not forget about his main gimmick of granting wishes. It terrifies me to just think about Nauticon's wish-granting power, thinking of all the ways he could manipulate what I wish for and twist my greatest desires into what would become my greatest nightmares. Only God knows what horrors I would unleash if I wished for Skybound 2. I should probably use one of those wishes for a new pair of pants, judging by the P meter. Going from one of humanity's greatest creations to certainly one of humanity's creations, we have the two Time Twins Crooks and Acronics from Season 7. Time is a pretty scary concept by itself, so two people being able to control it should be pretty scary too, right? Well, I don't quite feel myself quaking in my boots. I mean, why would I when those two people are an 80-year-old and a millennial? The way these two are shown off in their season really doesn't make me scared of them at all. Maybe a little if they had their powers back, but without the time blades, the two of them are really not that horrifying. Well, besides Crooks' hairline, that is pretty scary. First, they get a pretty awful season, and now they can barely put a dent in the P meter. Will the Time Twins ever win? Only time will tell. Not giving the Time Twins any more of our time, we now shift focus onto Harumi. Just like every other Ninjago fan, I am terrified of women, so of course Harumi petrifies me. Besides from just being a woman, Harumi herself is a pretty scary character. Need I remind you about that spider song she used to sing, or all of the emotional and physical damage she did to Lloyd and the other ninja? The fact that a guy like this takes orders from her definitely sends the message that she's worth running away from. Harumi is responsible for some truly nefarious acts of villainy that would for sure raise the P meter if I saw her while crossing the street. From a really scary villain to a pretty underwhelming villain, we now take a look at Iron Baron, one of the most forgettable villains in my opinion. At first, Iron Baron is actually extremely scary. He's certainly not very easy in the eyes with his scarred face, and his robotic hand makes him look very threatening combined with the peg leg. Iron Baron might look like a very scary villain, but just like Chen, he is absolutely useless in being a proper threat without any fancy weapons. His only power is that he's pretty good at lying, which if we're counting that as an actual power, then I ought to be the ultimate Spinjitzu master. I feel kinda bad for the poor guy having lost a hand, an eye and a leg, so we'll just put a little bit of PDP into the P meter. Now we get to tackle the big bad villain of the 10th season, who I'm sure will be an incredibly menacing and terrifying threat to behold. Oh god damn it, it's gonna be Omega, isn't it? Omega unfortunately suffers the same fate as Iron Baron, being an incredibly forgettable villain that at first appearance is terrifying to run into, being a literal demon and bringer of darkness. And then you realize all it takes is a very bright light and this guy is sent packing. Every modern cell phone comes with a built-in flashlight, so if this guy showed up in New York, needless to say he'd be cooked instantly. At least his power set does increase his scariness much more than Iron Baron, so I've gotta give him some points in the P meter. Entering into the Wildbrain era, we actually get a double feature with both Esfira and the Ice Emperor for the first season, with one of these being more scary than the other. I can tell you now that the scary one is not Esfira, or at least she isn't nearly as scary as the Ice Emperor. I will give it to her that she is quite a skilled fighter and sorceress, but I would not be able to take her seriously or consider her threatening the way she is constantly yelling about revenge. It just makes her come off more pathetic than threatening. Esfira is the third villain in a row to underperform on the P meter. I was debating on even including the Ice Emperor, but after 3 lackluster villains in a row, we could really use a more threatening villain, and Zane in his evil era is here to do the job. Zane as the Ice Emperor is a lot more intimidating to me than Esfira, with his frozen samurai appearance and with the way he would coldly be sitting on his throne while giving orders for his blizzard samurai army. He both looks scary and would be pretty scary in a fighting situation. Of course, being Zane, he has control over the element of ice, which for a regular person like me or you won't be very good. However, the Ice Emperor will lose out on some scary points as up until the last few episodes, he didn't really do much that warranted me to be scared of him. All he did was sit on his throne. It doesn't really matter though, as his meter is still much higher than the last 3. All the gamers in the audience have been waiting for this moment, the moment to determine how scary Unigami truly is, with him placing somewhere in the middle. Simply going off his design, Unigami could be perceived as a somewhat threatening guy, having this sort of stern and serious look to him, being especially threatening when he goes full gamer rage mode. His power to transform into a large dragon, whether it be in the real world or Prime Empire, definitely boosts his scary score up by quite a bit, and if we were talking about being in a Prime Emperor with Unigami, it would be horrifying, as Unigami would be able to control everything. A large amount of Unigami's threatening aura is practically zapped away though, when you take into account that he's literally just a child, with a pretty awful haircut for an 8-year-old, might I add. Unfortunately, it's game over for this poor gamer child, who won't be setting any high scores on the P meter. Season 13 brought us the incredibly designed villain, the Skull Sorcerer, a really terrifying design with a black and green colour scheme on his evil looking robes, complete with sharp wings and a menacing white mask. But as soon as you take that Skull of Hazador away, the Skull Sorcerer loses all of his magical abilities and is just some rich king called Vangelis. Just like Crux, the only scary thing about him is his hairline, and the fact that he's a political figure. This king won't be getting much in regards to the P meter. It's starting to smell a little fishy in here, as now we'll be examining Kalmar, the second purple villain to be eaten by his own plans. Strange that's happened twice. Kalmar is somewhat in the middle of terms of scariness for me. On the one hand, he's an incredibly skilled and manipulative villain, and on the other hand, he looks like this. A giant purple humanoid squid. If I actually saw this guy in real life, I'm willing to bet I'd end up laughing at how silly this guy looks, most likely being destroyed by him quickly after. It's hard to deny that seeing a giant purple humanoid squid in real life also would be pretty unsettling, as much as it is funny, and Kalmar is a bit of a racist towards surface dwellers, so the P meter is a lot more respectable compared to other villains. The mechanic will be our crystallized representation, as we've pretty much already talked about all the major villains from that season before. I'm sorry Mr. Ref, you just don't cut it as a main villain. Taking a look at the mechanic, he looks like a pretty threatening guy, having his Ninjoid eyepiece stuck to his head along with his powerful robotic arm that can be used as a flamethrower. The mechanic may just be a regular guy with cybernetic improvements, but if you ask me, it'd be pretty scary to run into him in real life. The P meter indicates that soiled pants will be encountered when the mechanic appears. And now we have our final two villains, coming from Ninjago's new era of Dragons Rising, Empress Beatrix and Lord Roz. Empress Beatrix is up first, and she isn't as scary as Roz, but she can still be an intimidating force. The way she was able to control the citizens of Imperium is a scary concept, and she has proven herself to be a formidable opponent in battle. But other than her large mech and manipulation ability, Beatrix falls short at every other part of being a scary villain. Design-wise, she doesn't look that scary, and she's a bit of a whining and pathetic leader without Roz. The P meter ain't gonna be very high for this Empress. And now finally, the last villain in this ridiculously immature video, Lord Roz, one of the newest Ninjago villains, but has quickly risen up through the ranks and is one of the scariest Ninjago villains. Appearance wise, I know my timbers would be shivered if I saw Roz in person. I mean, who wouldn't be terrified of a human looking tiger guy? And he's also an extremely powerful character that can easily throw down with a couple of dragons. Roz has only just entered the Ninjago world, but I can for sure see his scariness going up with each appearance. Lord Roz's score on the yellow meter is certainly very impressive for a newcomer. Wait, actually I think I forgot a very important and major Ninjago villain. You may want to grab an extra pair of pants, as I fear that this one may be the scariest and deadliest one of them all. The P meter is off the charts!